Darkness is descending on the land. In 1961, Walter and Victor Reuther recommended to Robert Kennedy that organizations composed of Americans as conservative as Barry Goldwater should be declared subversive along with the Communist Party and that their ranks be infiltrated by the FBI. The Reuthers also recommended that the FCC take action to eliminate conservative broadcasting from radio and television. This Reuther recommendation is being implemented by an FCC announcement which most broadcast stations interpret as an order to discriminate against conservatives. Liberals can demand free time to answer conservative news commentary which is presented under regular commercial sponsorship, but conservatives cannot demand time to answer liberals. Conservatives must do something soon, or conservative commentary will vanish from the airways. That is a summary of my report on Darkness is Descending on the Land. The full report after a message from my sponsor. In December 1961, Walter Reuther presented to Attorney General Robert Kennedy a memorandum, which had been prepared by Victor Reuther, on the radical right in America today. Reuther congratulated the Kennedy administration for saying harsh things about the radical right, but demanded action instead of words. Here are passages from the Reuther memorandum. Quote, "The radical right, or extreme right wing, or however it may be designated, includes an unknown number of millions of Americans of viewpoints bounded on the left by Senator Goldwater and on the right by Robert Welch. The radical right moves the national political spectrum away from the administration's proposed liberal programs at home and abroad. What are needed are deliberate administration policies and programs to contain the radical right from further expansion and in the long run to reduce it to its historic role of the impotent lunatic fringe. The radical right poses a far greater danger to this country than does the domestic communist movement." End quote. Reuther suggested that radical right organizations be placed on the Attorney General's subversive list along with the Communist Party and that their ranks be infiltrated by the FBI. This would be a political purge of major proportions. Note that radical right includes Senator Goldwater and every other American as conservative as or more conservative than the senator. Reuther admits that the number is in the millions and growing. At present, there are no visible signs, no tangible evidence that Kennedy plans to follow Reuther's recommendation about branding and outlawing the millions of Americans who are as conservative as Barry Goldwater. But one Reuther recommendation to Robert Kennedy is already being implemented. It involves broadcasting. Reuther insinuates that conservatives dominate radio and television broadcasting to the exclusion of liberal commentary, and he hints darkly that Robert Kennedy should have the FCC do something about this. I probably have wider coverage than any other constitutional conservative presenting news analyses on television, and I have one 15-minute program a week on 41 television stations in 13 states. My radio broadcast is on 71 stations in 20 states. On the other hand, there are scores of national network television news programs, most of them daily, presenting news analyses slanted leftward. In addition to that, the President and other officials have instant access to all mass media of communication with free time to advocate programs of totalitarian liberalism. The Reuther Memorandum, developing its false insinuation that radical right programs receive favored treatment by broadcasting stations, mentioned one place where a radio station, WLW in Cincinnati, sold time for a conservative broadcast but would not sell time for the UAW program called Eye Opener. Reuther said action against WLW for that conduct was pending before the FCC. In this connection, I offer another interesting contrast. A sponsor who wanted to buy time for my television broadcast in Kansas City was told by all three stations in that city that time was available until they discovered that he wanted to sponsor me. All stations then found that time was not available. My potential sponsor wrote to the FCC to see whether he had any redress through the FCC to get my program on the air. The FCC replied that there is no statute or commission rule which would give him redress. No national television network will sell time to sponsors who want to advertise with news broadcasts like mine. Houston, New Orleans, Kansas City, Boston, New York. These are a few of the major cities where respected business organizations which wanted to sponsor my television broadcast were unable to buy time on any television station. In all cases, time was available if my sponsor would present a liberal commentator. Now, that is the situation in national television. Liberals have an absolute monopoly on news broadcasting in many parts of the United States. They dominate news broadcasting everywhere. No conservative organization has a voice on national television, and not one constitutional conservative has a national television audience. Yet Walter and Victor Reuther in December 1961 told Attorney General Robert Kennedy that the FCC should take action against conservative broadcasters. The FCC has now taken action which, if something is not done about it, will eventually banish me and every other conservative commentator from every radio and television station in the nation, and will limit all broadcasting stations to the role of news media in the Soviet Union, the role of presenting nothing but propaganda governmentally approved. On July 26, 1963, the Federal Communications Commission sent to all radio and television stations a public notice restating its so-called fairness doctrine. Most broadcast stations have interpreted the FCC notice as a discriminatory policy against conservative broadcasts. That is, liberals can demand time to answer conservative broadcasts, but conservatives may not demand time to answer liberal broadcasts. Such discrimination does seem to be the intent of the FCC notice, but the FCC does not really say so, because the FCC has no legal right to order such bias. Hence, the FCC notice could be a two-edged sword if conservatives would do something about it. What if millions of American conservatives demanded equal time to answer liberal broadcasts? If conservatives relentlessly demanded equal time to answer all slanted liberal news broadcasts, the radio and television stations, particularly television, would have time for little else. As a result of the FCC announcement, one station now tags each one of my weekly broadcasts with a notice saying, quote, "This station voluntarily solicits responsible dissenting viewpoints to controversial matters discussed in the preceding program," end quote. The effect of this, of course, is to label every one of my broadcasts as questionable, controversial. The FCC has no authority to order any station to do that to me or anyone else. And in fact, the FCC notice does not order it. Most television stations gave many hours of coverage to the Negro March on Washington, August 28. Bayard Rustin, who was second in command of that march, had free time on television networks and on radio to present demands as to what the Congress and people of America must do. Bayard Rustin has a disgusting police record as a moral degenerate. No conservative has been given network time to answer hate-inciting comments made by perverts and communist fronters who spoke to the nation on television free of charge on August 28 from Washington. In August, the same month, I had a broadcast criticizing the Test Ban Treaty, and Dean Mannion had a broadcast on the same subject. The Citizens Committee for a Nuclear Test Ban Treaty demanded and got free and equal time from more than 150 broadcast stations to praise the treaty in answer to Mannion and me, although our broadcast time had been sold to sponsors at regular rates. The stations did not have to do that. Some stations wrote the FCC asking whether they must give time to answer conservative broadcasts whose time has been purchased. An FCC official said the commission could not answer the question because the commission had never settled the issue. Stations which insist on giving free time for liberals to answer conservative news commentary made on sponsored time are cutting their own throats. They must either go broke or cancel the conservative broadcasts. If conservative commentary is banished from the airways, the cause of constitutional government is probably dead. If a left-wing committee and all officials of government can get free time to advocate a treaty which could prove disastrous for our country, and conservatives are not even permitted to criticize the treaty factually, darkness is descending on the land. In the beginning, we do not see many overt acts of tyranny. Only occasionally, and under confused circumstances, does a midnight pounding on the door rout from bed some citizen whose sole crime is criticism of all-powerful government. Only occasionally, when a man's fight for justice can be calumniated as a selfish stand against progress, is a citizen jailed without trial and held as an example to intimidate others. Only occasionally is a military hero of the Republic stigmatized as mentally ill and incarcerated without formal process or permission to make bond, because the ruling tyranny, in momentary rage or panic, hated the man as a symbol of resistance. In the beginning, tyranny is subtle, its actions explained as necessary steps against enemies of the public good, its iron fist hidden in a velvet glove, its death's head grin masked as a smile of paternal beneficence. By the time the naked power of the police state is unsheathed and brandished boldly for all to see and cringe before, it is often too late for an intimidated populace to take action. Darkness is descending on the land. There is a great deal that you, an individual, can do about the current drive to remove all conservative news commentary from radio and television. All who order copies of this broadcast will receive detailed suggestions about what can be done. One obvious thing you can do is to let the stations and sponsors who do present conservative commentary know that you approve, and to let stations and sponsors who present left-wing commentary know that you disapprove. You could do something. It could be very, very late, later than you think in the life of our republic. Goodbye, and God bless you. For the full documented text of this broadcast, send 25 cents to Dan Smoot, Dallas 14, Texas, and ask for 422. Darkness is descending on the land. 6 copies, $1.